All right, you're ready to go. Thank
All
you.
right. Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Um, so I was expecting to be in person, so this is taking a little bit of a load off my shoulders going back to school. But anyway, I'm Kate. I have worked with some of you. I've worked on probably 3 or 4 bold cases throughout the past couple of years. So I'm familiar with some individuals. I will be referencing them throughout the training. Um, and I've worked with some of you and some of you I don't know, but hopefully we will cross paths at some point. So like I said, I'm Kate. If you don't like this training or you have anything negative to say about this training, my name is Mary. But if you love it, then I'm Kate. So anyway, today I'm talking about mental health. And it's something I am passionate about. I am not an expert in mental health, but I have experience with mental health. So I'm going to share my experiences with you, and hopefully something will resonate that you'll be able to take back with some of our folks. So I want to make this interactive. So anything you share, any experience you've had, any questions you've had, please, by all means, just jump in, say it. And if I reference anybody and you have feedback on that, share that as well. So it's an open book. If you ask a question I don't know the answer, I'll try and find the answer, but no guarantees. Today I was asked to do this training on just mental health and how it can impact somebody day to day and how that can vary. So just because somebody can do something one day doesn't mean they're going to be able to do it the next day. And I think that we can all, or we've all experienced that on some level, where, the weather's crappy, so we don't really feel like getting out of bed or doing something. We have motives that we have to get out of bed and do that, but there's times when we just don't, or there's something, where we're supposed to be putting in 100%, but our 100% is actually only 40% that day. So just keep that in mind. Try and relate your individual's experiences back on yours. I think sometimes we put this like superhuman expectation on our people, and we leave out the day-to-day realities that even we struggle with. And, we do our laundry and then my laundry sits, or I have to rewash it because it's been sitting in the washing machine for 3 days. So we all have those, and it's okay for our people to have that too. So that's where we're going to go today. Recognizing ourselves and our individuals and how to support them. So can I move this? I guess not. Okay, so the first slide is, what is mental health? So mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It's how we think, feel, and act. It helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. Just like our physical health, it's important for all people of any age group. That's exactly right. We all have mental health. Some of us are really good at managing our mental health. Some of us need assistance with managing our mental health, and some of us aren't able to manage it, and we're not at that point yet. So there's obviously different techniques that we all use to manage it. Some of it's medication, some of it's exercise, diet, some of it's watching TV. There's a balance for all of it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so just some quick demographics on mental health. And there we have mental health. So there you go. So 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. 1 in 20 experience serious mental illness. 50% of adults will receive a diagnosis at some point in their life. 1 in 6 youth experience a mental health disorder each year. And 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 75% by the age of 24. So the likelihood of people coming into our services are already experiencing the mental health that they're going to experience throughout their life. Obviously, there's different things that could impact that, accidents, severe traumas, all of that can kind of bring out other diagnoses at some point, but the majority are already going to have those characteristics. They might not have the diagnosis yet. So just going back to these statistics, mental illness includes all mental health. So that could be somebody who has depression or anxiety, but can still function throughout their day and their life. And then serious mental health illness are those individuals who are on disability. So where does it come from? This really is the nature versus nurture concept. I think everybody probably leans towards one or the other. And it really is, it's a mixture. So there's the biological, right? So that's the tweaks in the brain deficits, illness, prenatal birthing traumas, and substance abuse. We know our people are already, born with a brain deficit in some capacity. So there's a good chance that there's also a biological component to their mental health. Psychological traumas, significant loss in life, neglect, physical, emotional, chronic unmet basic needs. I'm hoping. Okay, that's right. That is a huge one for our people. They can't come to us and talk to us about their traumas, but we have to automatically assume that they have experienced trauma. We have all experienced trauma of some sort. And our coping abilities is what dictates the severity of those traumas and the effects of that trauma. And our people don't have the same capacity to cope as we do. So we automatically have to think that their traumas are probably more impactful to them. I know Michelle did a trauma training, so I won't go down that rabbit hole too much, but I can't not talk about it to an extent. So automatically assume that there is some psychological traumas that is impacting their mental health. And then environmental, so dysfunctional family, parental substance abuse, death, divorce, all of those things that they might not be able to recognize, but it's all something that they have felt and has impacted them. So one person that I work really close with at Bold is Goku. And so you look through this and he had prenatal traumas. His mother was an alcoholic. His brothers were very abusive towards him, along with his foster families, his dysfunctional family. Mom had multiple men coming in and out of the home while the dad was still living in the home. So this just makes sense. So when you really do a deep dive into your individuals and get to know them, you'll see their mental health isn't just something that you're born with and it's just been waiting to come out. A lot of times it's developed. So I do, as I just mentioned that about Goku, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but we will be talking about some sensitive topics. So please take care of yourself. If anything is triggering to you, I don't want that to occur, but obviously recognize that it can. And then I put the ACEs scores. If you guys have ever talked about the ACEs or have heard about the ACEs, it's adverse childhood experiences. And that really goes into, so it's adverse childhood experiences. So you would check off what it is, and then that's your score. And that score can really dictate a lot about your life and the trajectory of your life. So you can always look into the ACEs, which is really interesting as well. So how I want us to view mental health. So obviously there's still so much stigma around mental health. So, according to our statistics, there's people on this training that have mental health of varying degrees. But a lot of times people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address it. They don't want to let anybody know because of the stigmas attached to that. So, and I think we still hold those stigmas to our individuals as well, maybe not even recognizing that we're doing it. So when you think of mental health, what I want you to think about is mental health is a survival skill. At some point in our lives, our brains had to rewire in order for us to survive. So when you look at, let's say, Goku, or when you look at Leona or any of the other people, their mental health is serving, or at some point had served a purpose for them. So doing that rather than just being like, they are crazy, they don't know what's going on, I don't understand, it's all their parents' fault, whatever your thought is on that, their mental health has helped them to survive at some point. Mental health can be a product of trauma. So when you see a list of diagnoses or something's occurring that just seems really off, that's a sign that they experienced trauma at some point. So then you want to ask yourself, what has this person been through to get them to this point? Where mental health becomes an issue, and it is when it's no longer needed as a survival skill, right? So we know Goku obviously was not born with the name Goku, but he has developed the name Goku because it served a purpose for him, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But now he doesn't necessarily need the identity of Goku to be a productive member of society, to feel safe, to feel like he can get his needs met, but that has followed him. So now it's looked at more as peculiar in the eyes of the general population. Does that make sense? Stop me if I'm not making sense or if anybody has any questions. I put a couple trivia things in here, and these are really just things that I've learned or I've noticed that can help, I guess, as you move forward on cases. So does anybody know what a key indicator you can find in the ISP that can identify untreated trauma? So if you're reading an ISP, your mind will definitely be like, there's probably some trauma going on there. Any guesses?
Adoption?
What's that?
Adoption?
That could, yeah, I mean, that's a good one. There's a lot of answers to this question. There could be a lot of answers to this question. The one that I always, as soon as the paper comes across my desk, and there is a list of mental health diagnoses. So that means untreated trauma. That means that the psychiatrist can't quite pinpoint what's causing the behaviors. And so they're just getting whacked with different diagnoses. So I have somebody with depression, anxiety, bipolar, PTSD, and like intermittent explosive disorder. That doesn't make sense. There's lists of diagnoses don't really make sense when you look at it. So whenever you are reading an ISP or you get a referral and you see a list of diagnoses, more than likely there's some unrecognized trauma there to work through. So I'm sure you've seen the Maslow hierarchy of need. And shoot, I missed all my notes that I wanted to say on that. Oh, well. Let me go back. I don't know how to go back. There we go. Just a couple other points. So I typed up my notes and then I just start blabbing and I forget what I was going to say. So just some ways to go back to like how mental health comes from our brain rewiring itself to survive. So just a fact, schizophrenia, people who have schizophrenia who have gone through testing, they have increased levels of dopamine in them. Okay, so dopamine is the feel-good drug that surges through us to make us feel good. So if you think about it, somebody with schizophrenia who has increased levels of dopamine, their body at some point felt the need that it needed to increase its levels of dopamine in order to fulfill something. So maybe somebody who has gone through significant neglect and they're not getting that dopamine feeling from their caretakers or people around them, their body has automatically started increasing that dopamine, which has then led to schizophrenia in the future. Does that make sense? That fact to me was like pretty mind-blowing. People who disassociate, right? So the lights are on, but nobody's home. They're not responding. They're just kind of blank staring. Or, they kind of go into like a different realm of person that you're not used to seeing. So I have somebody who disassociates who is straight Republican male. When he disassociates, he is no longer those three things. He is a gay liberal. He's still male, but gay and liberal. So that's his disassociation. So it's just like a total shift in who he is as a person. But again, at some point, his brain was serving a purpose. Like that disassociation served him from being able to remove himself from what was currently going on around him to protect himself. Yeah, so that's all I had on that side. Okay, moving on. So this is the Maslow hierarchy of need. So what it is this is the steps that we all go through life, or we're all trying to reach that self-actualization. But in order to move up this pyramid, the one below has to be fulfilled, right? So physiological, food, water, sleep, all our basic needs, shelter, well, I guess safety, they're calling safety shelter in this one. Safety is security, right? Love and belonging is relationships. And then we move up to our self-realization and how we feel about ourselves. So again, I keep referencing Goku, because it screams at me for him. So I guess this would be a good training to show his staff, as they come on to work with him. And so just an example of what mental health can look like and how we can perceive it, but how the person is constantly going up and down on this. Okay, so I've worked with Goku for 6 years. And when I first met him, he was living in a boarding house in an unsafe part of Harrisburg, and he had a shared bathroom. Now, a lot of his traumas have happened in the bathroom in the past, so he would never use a shared bathroom. So he was urinating and defecating in bottles and bags and waiting for his staff to come to then move them out of the room. So then Goku moved into the apartment building he's at now. He has his own bathroom and he's using that. So that behavior issue was really a trauma response. So now he's there. He has a habilitation aide who comes in, gets him, takes him out for his food, water, whatever he needs. He will not leave that apartment because he does not feel safe leaving that apartment, right? So he's down there getting his basic needs met, but he hasn't reached that feeling of safety where he can venture out on his own. So the habilitation agency removes themselves, and he is left with no supports at the time. This was before Bold started. He then had no way to get his food and water and any of his other, basic needs met. So he was going out into the community. He was walking around the corner to the CVS and getting his own things. So a lot of people on the team were like, oh, look, he is capable. See, he is doing this. He's always been able to do this, and he's just pulling wool over our eyes. So then Bold starts and he stops going out, and he comes back down to this need for his food, water, and safety, because now he has staff to help him there, but he's never actually moved up to that safety. So now he's wavering between those. So everyone thought that he was able to do it, but really he was just trying to meet those basic needs. Does that make sense? So when we think of mental health and we look at this, you kind of have to always think about where they're at. So now Bold is here. He is feeling safe in his place, not just because of the staff that are there, but because he's becoming more comfortable in his apartment building. And now he's moved up to this love and belonging. He is going out and he is trying to meet his peers that live there. He's building relationships with staff much quicker than he has before. But if he would move and he would move into somebody else, he could go back down to that safety, or he could go back down to those basic needs levels. So just kind of keeping that in mind of mental health, but also where he is with their, when assessing where they're at on the hierarchy. So I'm not going to go over a bunch of diagnoses. I just put in a couple that I think are effective, are helpful to know about, because of the individuals that we serve oftentimes have these. So anxiety is generalized anxiety, panic disorder, social anxiety, phobias. I'm not going to go over all of these that are listed here, but I think it's important to just identify, irritability isn't something that a lot of times people put with anxiety, or having headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches. So if somebody is reporting those, it could be actually anxiety that they're experiencing. Also refusals. So if they don't want to go out, it could be an anxiety induced, or it could be that they're trying to obtain control because things feel out of control for them. So just some things then down at the bottom that can also induce anxiety. They could have thyroid problems, drinking caffeine, substance medications. Those can all be anxiety and creating more of those anxious feelings. So when you work with someone with anxiety, I put at the bottom, the opposite of anxiety is control. A lot of times people think the opposite of anxiety is calm. So teaching somebody how to calm down, that's a coping strategy for anxiety, but that's not what's going to really, like, quote unquote, relieve the anxiety. Finding ways to give somebody a sense of control in their life, or whatever the anxiety is, whatever's inducing the anxiety is what's going to help them with that. So if going to doctor's appointments is really anxiety inducing, then finding a way that they can control in that situation. So it could be, choosing what staff takes them, what doctor they see, where they go, that they have the paperwork in their hand, anything like that. Just always trying to find ways to control. If it's just overarching anxiety, what are things that they can control in their life? And as we talk about different ways to support them, it's a marathon. So if you come in and you start working with somebody, like, oh, they have anxiety, they need to figure out how they can control things, and you just start dishing things out on what they can control or trying to implement things quickly, you're going to get pushback, and that's probably going to be more anxiety inducing. So just kind of keep that, like, on the back burner as you think about things and how you're going to move somebody forward, and implementing it slowly. Depression, there's obviously different types of depression, and a lot of times it overlaps with anxiety. So a lot of times we'll have depression and anxiety. Anxiety, might make somebody want to feel more secluded because it causes anxiousness, and then depression comes in because they're no longer connection or as connected. So the opposite of depression, a lot of times people think is happiness. It's not, it's connection. So finding ways to connect somebody, like we look at Goku, we couldn't force Goku to interact with anybody in his apartment building, but now that he's branching out and making those connections, we're seeing more fulfillment in his life, and more, who's just in general, we're just seeing a huge change in him right now. So when you think of depression, think of connection. How can we expand natural supports? How can we expand them getting out and doing things, connecting with the community and society? If there's free lunches they can go to at a church, taking them to there if they're willing to go out. I wouldn't necessarily push them to, sit with somebody and start a conversation, but just generally being around somebody can help with that feeling of connection. Bipolar, I always use the analogy of a roller coaster with bipolar, right? So you can sit and watch a roller coaster go up and down, and that can be what it looks like for somebody on bipolar. They're either going to have the mania side of bipolar or the depressive episodes of bipolar. My recommendation is if somebody goes into a bipolar, like manic episode or a depressive episode, don't get on the roller coaster with them. Watch the roller coaster. If all of a sudden someone's in mania and they're not sleeping and they're, doing some peculiar things that they shouldn't be doing or unsafe things, be there and support it, but don't feel like you have to chase it down and create interventions for it, or, these huge plans to try and get somebody to come back. It will run its course. You just need to make sure that they stay safe and healthy during that period. And then you can talk to the team about how to support. But if, every time somebody goes into a manic state and you start chasing it or wearing yourself down, trying to, control it or maintain it, you're going to burn yourselves out. Delusions, I kept this in here. I put this in here because I know we have quite a few people with delusions. So I think of Leona and her delusions, her boyfriend, Christopher, I believe, Goku's cat, Nala used to have human-like tendencies. She does not anymore. And then the newer client that you'll be getting, her cat also has some superhero strength as well. So delusions are fulfilling a need for somebody that is unmet, and it could be a deep-seated thing that came from, their childhood that they're bringing up, or it could be something newer. It could be the loss of a relationship, or something important in their life, and the delusion is fulfilling that need now. So my question is, should you make attempts to make the person understand that the delusion is not real? So in Leona's case, should you try and get her to believe that Christopher is not real? No one's going to answer. No.
I feel like that's a sorted question. Because of course, no, you're not going to sit there and try to convince her. She's had this delusion for years, but trying to maybe skirt around it and go a different direction might be something we'd want to do.
Yeah. So I appreciate your participation, Sam.
I know how it's like to be on the other end of the
train. So yes, so you're going to bang your head against the wall if you try and get somebody to believe that their delusion is not real, and you're going to spend all your time doing that, and you're both going to end up frustrated, and you're going to hurt your relationship more than likely, because the delusion is 100% real to them. So that would be like me coming on this training and telling all of you that you don't work for Bold, and you would all look at me like I'm insane because you're all on a Bold training. So it's very real to you that you work at Bold, and who am I to tell you that you don't work at Bold? So as long as the delusion is not hurting somebody's health and safety, I would just let it be. I a lot of times use delusions as ways to assess mental health, because a lot of times it comes in waves. So when I started working with Goku, his cat had human-like tendencies, and knew a lot of things. So I remember the first day I met him was at a CMU building, and Goku does not like men, but he liked women. Okay, so Nala was there, and at the time Goku had a male SC, and the male SC put his hand out, and Nala went over and started licking the hand of the SC and was rubbing on him, and like what I would identify as a cat enjoying this person. He came up to me and he bit my nose, and I was like, okay, obviously Nala doesn't like me. She bit my nose, but Goku said, that was a love bite, and she was trying to attack Ed and kill Ed, is what occurred in Goku's mind frame. So anyway, we use those delusions and the delusion of Nala in a way to assess his mental health. So his mental health was not good then. Nala would knock things off the refrigerator. If he didn't like a staff and we had pictures of staff, somehow Nala would knock just that one picture off, and it would go behind the fridge. So we use Nala as an assessment of his mental health. So the delusions you can use as an assessment of mental health. And that's how I would use them to work through with your individual. I have somebody else who has a love for these objects. I'm not going to say what they are, because if you ever see this person out in the community, then you'll know who it is. But somebody that I know, another BC, took the steps to try and get her to believe that these objects like weren't these like creatures that she loved and that were real to her and had feelings. And I have used them as like, okay, if these are your fellas and these are important to you, that means that you're their mom. And so what do you need to do as their mom to give them the best life? So you can kind of use the delusion to work through and give them support and to teach them. So like with Leona and Christopher, instead of harping on Christopher not being real, you can talk about what it means to be in a relationship, and is this relationship meeting your needs, and how do you know to trust somebody, and you can work through it that way. And then you can see as Leona maybe starts building connections in her in the apartment building, or something else, the delusions may decrease. The comments about Christopher may decrease, and then you'll start to be able to assess her mental health in that way. I do have a suggestion down here. If you haven't watched Lars and the Real Girl, It is so good. It's on Tubi and it's free, but it's all about delusions. And so a lot of times I reference that movie when I'm working with somebody with delusions, because yeah, it's just really good. It's about how instead of getting him to conform to society, society has kind of conformed to him, which is super cool. So I recommend it if you have an hour and a half on a weekend or something. So day-to-day impact of mental health. So it impacts executive functioning, right? Which is the prefrontal lobe, which we know is usually impacted by intellectual disabilities as well, or can be impacted by intellectual disabilities. So we all have kind of two different IQs. We have our IQ of the information we know, and then we have executive functioning, which is what we do with that information. So I might know that I need to wake up in the morning and get ready and go to work, but my executive functioning is impaired. And so I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to implement the steps to complete that task. I don't know how to initiate it. So and if you look at executive functioning, I have to move you guys over here. I don't know if that worked for you, but it pretty much impacts like everything that you use day to day, right? So our impulse control, emotional control, flexible thinking, our memory, self-monitoring, being aware of ourselves in the moment, planning and prioritizing, task initiation, organization. If you didn't have executive functioning, you wouldn't be here on this training right now, right? Think of all the steps it took to get you here, and then to maintain on here and to focus. So mental health greatly impacts somebody's ability to use their executive functioning skills, and it changes day to day. So whereas one day somebody, has task initiation and they get up and they vacuum the apartment, or they get up and they go to work, and then the next day they fall flat and you're, what is going on? Something with their executive functioning was impaired that day. And there's different things that obviously impact that, and we'll go into that, but just constantly thinking. And I feel like when I started to learn about executive functioning, because I'm in these trainings and everyone's like, well, it impacts their executive functioning. I'm like, what the heck is executive functioning? So I researched it, and then my mind exploded, because it's so imperative to our lives and our ability to like be successful. And then to not have that, or have a deficit in that, just makes life a lot trickier. So just another fact that really isn't related to this training, but does anybody know what other diagnosis can significantly impact the prefrontal cortex and executive functioning? That is the number one known cause for IDD, but is severely underdiagnosed.
I don't know the answer.
Is it fetal alcohol syndrome?
Ding, ding, ding. It sure is.
Nice.
Yeah, it is. And it's really crazy. And do you know, Cheryl, what the demographic of women who are most likely to have a child with FASD? It is a single white college educated female. Yeah, which I think usually you're like, oh, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, like people who don't know how to be a parent or how to do this or that, or you have your images in your head. No one thinks of single white female college educated student, but they're the ones at happy hour. They're the ones that are going out on the weekends having fun and then not paying attention to themselves. So keep that in mind. That is no joke of a diagnosis. So okay, so day-to-day impact. So, right, this is kind of what we're talking about, is how mental health can impact somebody differently day to day. And there's so many different ways that it can, or reasons. So this is just a very small snippet of thoughts that when you go into a house or into somebody's home, or working with somebody, and they're just not functioning the same way they have been in the week before or the days before. These are just things to keep in mind, to kind of observe. If their sleep, if they didn't get enough sleep the night before, if their diet has changed, if they have missed medications, upcoming appointments that could be stress inducing. They can only kind of focus on that one particular thing. If there's been a change in staff. There could be like a fear of neglect, a lack of trust. Again, that's where their mental health is going to kind of spike because they have this fear or depression or, you know, whatever their mental health diagnosis is, that could be impacted by that. If they have contact or reduction of contact with family or natural support. So if they have a turbulent relationship with somebody and you're hearing that they heard from them or they haven't heard from them and they're perceiving that as, you know, a cause of concern, that's going to impact their ability to use their executive functioning. Does anybody know what a common infection is that can present as psychosis?
Strep throat.
Maybe. I never heard that one, but I wouldn't be
Oh, yeah, there's
surprised.
like a whole disease that goes along with
Are you-
strep throat.
Oh.
UTI.
Ah, UTIs. I have somebody that she runs out in the middle of the street, and the first thing we have to say is, does she have a UTI? And every time she has a UTI, she thinks she's pregnant. She has all of these symptoms of psychosis. She starts taking the medication and she's back to her baseline. So just always keep that in mind. If you start to see an increase in psychosis or peculiar behaviors, just rule out a UTI, even for our guys, because we know hygiene isn't always at the top of everyone's priority list. So that's like an easy fix. If we're gonna, how much effort we're gonna put into things, getting on an antibiotic is an easy way to do that. So how we can support these individuals. So you need to be the investigator. So you need to constantly assess the person, look for patterns. You know, if you notice at the beginning of the month, every month, they're a little bit more hostile, a little bit more resistant to things. Maybe you need to look at where their medications are at. So you're just constantly looking at the big picture of who they are and what you're seeing from them. And you can kind of start to piece together a timeline or holidays. You know, we know that there's certain time periods where some individuals are just going to be struggling more. So we're going to put less demand on them in that time of year. And then you obviously want to observe the fluctuations in mood and behaviors. You are their advocates, going in and seeing them. And as in a behavior support role, any information we can get, any observations we can get is helpful. You know, I think this is kind of going off on a behavior support spiel, but I think sometimes people come in and they see behavior support as like annoying, but we are there to support. So we can kind of help create the bigger picture in these situations and see like where different give you, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words, different ideas or ways to reframe the mental health or ways to, you know, seek out other supports that are needed. So the more you have, the more we can be there to help support with the clients. And then like, exactly, you need to communicate it with the team. So any communication is going to be helpful. And if you aren't even seeing the pattern, say Cheryl is on the band, I think is what you guys use. So she notices that every Monday staff are going in and Goku is refusing, like either refusing the service, refusing something. You might not recognize that pattern, but Cheryl can start to piece that together. Like, oh, let's go back and see every Monday this is happening. What's happening on Sundays? You know, oh, he's staying up all night Sunday nights. And so then he doesn't want staff on Monday, but you're not going to get that picture from just your one experience, but she's going to be able to put it together on a wider scale. So this is just some things that I have observed. Some things I've seen in research, but these are just my observations from people that I work with. So my people with some more severe mental health, when they are in mental health, when they're struggling with their mental health, their furniture is constantly moving. I don't know if you have anybody like this, but I will go in. The new lady that you're getting TZ, her furniture will be rearranged on the regular, and that's how you know that she's struggling. Because it's a grounding technique, lifting heavy things, moving heavy things, organization, that's all grounding. So I find that a lot of people move their furniture. I have somebody else who moves their furniture and it's so heavy and I don't know how they do it. But he is motivated enough by whatever is, building up within him that he feels the need to move it to feel better. So keep an eye out for moving furniture, changes in sleep patterns, reports of nightmares. Goku used to report nightmares all the time. He'd wake up with scratches on his body. He hasn't, I don't think, in years that I've heard. Complaints of medical issues. Again, this is something for your new lady. She constantly complains of medical issues to the point that she had a doctor. She reported that her left hand, something was wrong with her left hand and they couldn't find it or they weren't going to do it. So then she switched it to the right hand. She got surgery on the right hand. I don't know how. I'm sure I know how that happened. Yeah, so medical issues, if people are complaining more of medical issues, that's something to be mindful that their mental health might not be at baseline. Refusal to attend appointments that they've attended previously. Increase in delusional comments. So like if we start to hear that Nala is having more human-like behaviors, that's a sign to us that maybe that Goku's mental health isn't where it typically is anymore. Frequency of calls to on-call or natural supports. Again, this is a way that I can assess Goku is if I'm getting multiple calls from him and his messages are all the same, then what he leaves on my voicemail is always the same, but the number of calls, changes. And then increase in touching. So that's another grounding technique. We know that with, and I hope it's okay that I keep bringing up Goku because he touches a lot and his touches increase whenever he is feeling out of sorts. And I think JB is the same way that you work with. So, and somebody else I have that, touch is a grounding technique. So if you notice that could be another sign. Again, all individuals are different. These might just be normal. They just wanted to move their furniture around because they wanted to change. But it could also be a sign. So just always kind of keep an eye out, take notes, make observations. So recently this is how we can support with psychiatry. But recently I did a case study where I was able to present a case of somebody that I work with to a psychiatrist. And so this was feedback from the psychiatrist as what they want, what was helpful for them. So breaking it down, just a brief current support, what the person's receiving support or how often, trauma history, it does not need to be in depth, but just the types of trauma that they've experienced at what point in their life, trauma responses, if you're aware of that. Again, that's something that you can kind of talk through with your team. If you have behavior support, they can talk about it. Therapists can provide that. And then the needed support to provide for safety and stabilization. So what you're doing as a team to keep them safe in their apartment or out of the hospital. So whatever is needs to happen for that. And then areas of concern, what you're struggling with as a team to support them with. So showering, cleaning, going to appointments, taking medications, delusions or hallucinations, anything like that would go in your areas of concern. And this is just a really good one pager to give to the psychiatrist to give them a clear picture. We obviously, share data and they like data, but the data might not be what they need to prescribe or notice that it's a medication issue. So I think giving kind of just the synopsis is really helpful. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, so this is where I call us out in the helping profession because we are all fixers. Well, I won't say we are all fixers, but a lot of us are fixers and we want to come in and we want to fix the problem. We don't want to sit in the problem. We want to get out of the discomfort, because we don't like that uncomfortable feeling. So this is where you have to recognize yourself, and you have to do some recognition of what you are trying to avoid, right? You have to do your own behavior analysis on yourself, where you're trying to avoid what is triggering you, and that you have to be okay with them not having the same motives or desires as you. So I know Goku's level of cleanliness is much different than how we would like to be, our homes to be. And so that, I mean, it's hard for anybody to go in and sit in it, but then for somebody who has, you know, issues with cleanliness, or they like everything to be spotless, to go in there and sit with that is really hard. And we've talked a lot about that with, you know, staff prior to Bold. They would just go in and start thinking things were trash and throwing it away, or cleaning when he didn't give permission to clean. So you just have to recognize your own discomfort and then being okay with sitting in your discomfort. If we go in and we fix all the problems, we're not creating motivation. We're not helping them with self-pride or drive to reach their goals. We have to get on their level, on their pace, and we have to find ways to encourage them to do it. And then we need to be supporters, coaches, and cheerleaders. So I have this. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it. We can't hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it. Can you hear me now? Sam, you're muted, so I can't hear you.
We can hear
I'm
you.
sorry, I can hear you, but I can't hear the actual YouTube. But hold on, let me see. Oh, I can't. Here we go. If you go back to your thing, I can actually pull it up, and then we can see if I can share it.
Oh, you want me to? You want me to send you the link in the chat?
Oh yeah, send me a link in the chat, and we'll see if I can open it. I don't know if that will help, but we'll try.
I don't know how to find the chat.
It should be down at the bottom. Sometimes it like disappears.
Let me stop sharing.
I think that's what you have to do, right? Stop. Is that what it is? You have to stop sharing and then try it again and the sound might work.
Oh,
Let's see if I can do it. Let's so I'm gonna go into the internet.
does anybody have any questions or thoughts or feedback?
To use Miro. Well, when you draw on a whiteboard, no one sees it.
Oh.
With Miro, and together.
Okay, sorry. Share screen. Here, tell me if you can hear this.
In real time from literally everywhere. Look, it's not
wait.
just a board, it's an infinite
I didn't press share. Okay, there you go.
canvas where
Can you
you
hear
visualize
that?
ideas.
Yeah.
You can. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna skip that.
Review designs, create mind maps, flowcharts.
Skip it.
So if anybody knows Brene Brown, she's awesome. Mm-mm.
No? Huh, it must be, I don't know. What I can do, I actually had the same thing the last time we tried to do this with another trainer. So what I can do is share it with the staff later on. I don't know why it doesn't share the actual, I don't know. I guess I'll have to play with that on my own at some point.
Yeah, there's something you can do. I forget what it is.
How do I stop sharing my screen?
Well, it's a really good video.
Where? Oh, okay. Stop sharing. Okay. Sorry. There you go.
It's on empathy and just really, okay. It's a really good video on empathy. It's really short, but just how to sit with somebody in their current state and not try and fix the problem. So I encourage you to watch it. It's like 2 minutes, so it's not long. So the first thing to do when you're working with somebody with mental health is to build a relationship with them. Now on here, I have the 5-to-1 ratio because I also think that that's important to consider. If you've never heard of the 5-to-1 ratio, which you probably haven't, is in any relationship you have, whether it's somebody that you're working with, whether it's a colleague, whether it's your husband or child, all relationships balance on a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every one negative interaction you have with somebody, or they perceive it as a negative interaction, you have to have 5 positives to offset that, to keep the relationship afloat. So when you're going in and you're constantly prompting somebody to do something or pointing flaws out, and you're not doing positives to offset that, your relationship is going to dwindle. So keep that in mind. You always want to have more positive interactions with somebody than negative. And you might not be perceiving it as a negative, but if they are, that's what counts. That's what matters. So you just always want to make sure you're going in and providing them with whatever that positive interaction is. Trust is important. I don't say the most important because boundaries are the most important. Trust is important. And how you show trust is showing up, communicating with them, taking initiative and supports. Do not make false promises. Don't overshare personal information, and don't force the relationship. You need to be patient and give choice. So being there for the person, hearing the person, and then following through is what builds trust. I think a lot of times when we start with somebody, we get hyped and we want to be their preferred, or make us feel okay with the relationship. So then we try and force things on them. But these people have had multiple staff come into their lives, probably hundreds, who have done all the things that you're saying or all the things you're doing, and they're no longer in their life for whatever reason that is. So you can say whatever you want, but that doesn't make it believable. Your actions are going to make that relationship believable to them. For example, just with Goku, like I said, I've been working with him for 6 years. I was working with him for 2 years when I left for maternity leave. Yeah, I think it's been 2 years. Our relationship was not really solidified to him until I came back from maternity leave, because going on maternity leave, he said, I don't think you're ever going to come back. And when I came back, that was enough for him to be like, okay, she's good. And that was over 2 years. So that was close to 3 years. So it takes time, and you don't know what it's going to be to solidify that relationship for that person. But you just have to keep showing up. You just have to keep doing it. But you also need to do it with intention. So if you just show up, but you're not present in that shift, then it doesn't really count. Same with, the false promises and all of those things. You can say these things, but if you're not following through, or if you say, I'm never leaving, that's probably a lie, right? There's a good chance that you're not going to stay at Bold until you die, or until they die, because that's just the way life is. And also, with keep showing up, you have to protect yourselves. You can't keep showing up if you burn yourself out. So making sure that you're staying within your own boundaries. And that's why I have boundaries are essential, because we know people come into this field and they are fixers. And so they do whatever they need to do to feel good in that relationship. And so they will overshare to make it seem like or feel like they're closer with that person. But a lot of times people with mental health can't handle somebody else's issues, somebody else's life. They just need to focus on their own to get through. So if you're sharing, your marital issues or financial struggles that you're having, they can take that on for themselves. And you might feel like it's closeness, but to them, that's trauma. So you just have to be really mindful of how you share and what you share. And you can always talk to your supervisors about what's appropriate and how to do that, because there is some level of self-disclosure over time that becomes okay, right? Like them knowing that you have a kid, them knowing that you're going on vacation. But it needs to be done in a strategic way. So meet the person where they're at in their recovery. You need to have realistic expectations, to come in and think that somebody is just going to jump in your car and go grocery shopping and budget their money and come back is probably not going to happen. But meet them where they're at. So, maybe like them, you go grocery shopping and them carrying up one bag and you have to go down and take the rest of the trips to get the groceries. That's okay. They're participating and you're seeing where they're at, and then you're compensating for the rest of where they're not at yet. If you give them unrealistic expectations, if you start to feel frustrated, that means that you have unrealistic expectations for them at that point, or they're not meeting your expectation. So then we need to readjust and either look at interventions on how to get them to reach that expectation, or we need to adjust their expectations. Be mindful of what makes sense to them. Going back to their need of survival, their need of comfort and calm. So if they, whatever they needed to do to survive is what's going to make sense for them. I know Sierra was talking about the one day with Goku and his swords, and he wanted his swords next to the bed. And that doesn't really make sense probably for anybody else to have swords next to their bed, because they're tripping hazard and there's a gazillion other things next to the bed, but swords can be a source of protection. And so if the sword is next to the bed, if somebody would come into his apartment, he could reach the sword and have the sword. So just always coming from the lens of the person and what makes sense to them, and then recognizing that and validating that, and accepting that. And then you can work through, once that relationship is built, maybe how to modify that. But a lot of times it will modify on its own as they become more comfortable and they move up that Maslow hierarchy of needs. Anybody have questions, feedback, thoughts? You guys are, I don't know, this is either really easy, like I'm just telling you all the good things, or you're sitting there thinking this is a bunch of hubbub. Okay, so yeah, validation is probably the best thing that you can do for somebody with mental health, is just recognizing them, who they are, where they're at, and what they're saying. So a lot of times people struggle with validation because they think that you are telling them what they're saying is real, or you believe them, or you're reinforcing that somehow. But that's not what validation is. Validation is recognizing that their feeling is real about the situation. So if Leona is devastated that Christopher hasn't responded to her or hasn't been communicating with her, Christopher is not real, but that doesn't mean that her emotion isn't real. So you're validating her emotion. I am so sorry that you are struggling with this right now. I'm so sorry you feel like you're being ignored. Never once did I say Christopher is real, right? And like he shouldn't be doing this to you, but you're saying like, you have hurt feelings right now and it sucks to have hurt feelings. I'm really sorry that you're struggling right now. You're not agreeing or disagreeing. And the thing with validation is you need to be aware of triangulation, and how you respond. So we'll go into that. But if, somebody says, Kate comes in here and takes my money, right? Obviously you're gonna have to report that to your supervisor. But if it's already been like made aware that I did not go in and take all the money, but they continue to say it, you can validate that without jumping on board. So if somebody says, Kate took all my money, and you say, Kate should not be taking your money, that is not okay that she's doing that, that causes triangulation, right? Because then that causes the individual is then like, ooh, I have her on my side. And then you can start that banter against that other person. People love triangulation, right? That's the drama. That's what feels good. But validate it and say, I'm really sorry that feel like you've experienced that. Like that would be really frustrating if I couldn't trust staff, right? You're not saying that I took the money, but you're validating his feeling or their feeling that they've been betrayed, that their money has been taken from them. This is just a little video on validation. Again, you can send that out later if you guys want to read it. It's just like another 2-minute video. So this is how you validate. This is a long list. But you want to pay attention, you want to listen, you want to observe the individual's behavior. So if they're sitting, then you can sit next to them. If they're pacing, you can pace with them. Again, that's just a way to show that you were in the moment with the person. You want to reflect accurate information. So it sounds like you're feeling hurt because Kate took the money. Like it sounds like you're feeling hurt because you feel betrayed by staff. Label the nonverbals. Hey, I see you're pacing right now. That makes me think you're feeling anxious. Pointing out those, hey, I see your eyes are shut, or hey, I see your head is down. That makes me think that you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling sad. You'll know what those personal cues are for those people and what you typically see. You can normalize it. Hey, anyone who has staff that doesn't show up, that makes they feel frustrated by that. That makes sense that you're feeling frustrated that, you thought staff were coming and they didn't show up. The coach has a person-to-person. Oh, I thought I took that out. But anyway, treat the person as an equal beyond the roles. Give a genuine response, right? Like you are human, they are human. Surgery is scary. I'll keep you in my thoughts. You're not saying don't be scared, right? Don't be this, don't be that. Oh, it's not a big deal. That's invalidating. You're excusing them to make yourself in that moment feel a little bit better, right? You're trying to fix that problem. Validating is not about fixing the problem. Validating is about being in the moment. So hopefully some of you will take yourselves off mute and answer my questions in my exercise. Sam, I already saw you off mute. Thanks, girl.
Cheryl's good too. And Angie.
So here's an exercise. We're going to pretend that these are the individuals, and these are their statements, and then I want staff to come back as validating. Okay. So the first one is, I don't want to go to my doctor's appointment. Every time I go, they stick a needle in my arm. So who can turn that into a validating statement? Do you want me to go back?
I feel like Cheryl's actually probably done this. With Kill, I'm sure. Let's see, but I don't want to put her on the spot. I'm trying to think of. I'm terrible at these types of examples.
Don't put so much pressure on yourself, Sam. It's okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody says, I don't want to go to the doctors, what would you say to let them know that you understand you don't want them to go to the doctor?
I would probably just say that, I don't always like going to the doctor either, but I really like to be healthy. So part of being healthy is going to the doctor, and it makes me feel better when I go.
Yeah. So that is that's not being in the moment, right? That's trying to get your agenda accomplished, right? That's what makes validating really hard. And I'll tell you what, if you have a significant other, if you validate and they think you're going to come back with a, let me tell you why you're wrong, and you validate, they're going to probably be blown off their chair. So, I recommend you practice validating on other people, and then I get a lot of the don't social work me. But I don't want to go to my doctor's appointment. Every time I go, they stick a needle in my arm. Yeah, buddy, I get it. I get that you don't want to go to the doctor's office. It makes a lot of sense. You do get a lot of shots when you go to the doctor's office.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So, and then you can talk about, what can we do to get you there? You need support. Like, how are you feeling about that? What can I do to support you? But you want to validate it first. You want to let them know that, that you understand and you hear what they're saying. You're not fixing their problem. Okay. So staff keep coming in here and rearranging my things. It's my place. They said they shouldn't touch.
All right, I'll do it. So, how about saying that I understand that you're upset that staff rearrange your things, and you feel that it's not their place and they shouldn't touch it. That kind of makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want that either.
Yeah,
There
there
you
you
go.
go. You just validated. You just validated me and my frustration. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's just reflecting back. So I kind of, somebody else should answer this because
So
I
wait,
already
what
gave
if-
this one away.
Oh,
Go
Natalie's
ahead.
What
good.
if staff move? What if staff's moving stuff because it's dangerous, like your sword next to your bed?
Yeah, so you're still validating it. And then you can say, yeah, like I'll follow up on that, or be like, or if you know that that was the situation and why they moved it, like, yeah, I get it. Totally makes sense that, you know, it's frustrating. People are touching your things. Like, I understand where you're coming from. And then I would say, I think that the reason they moved it is because they're concerned for your safety. You know, and then you can kind of back them up, but you want to validate it first. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because if you immediately come back with, if they're like, staff are touching my things, they move my sword, then, and you say, well, they moved your sword because it's not safe. Like, you totally dismissed their feeling in that. So it doesn't mean that you're saying that it's wrong that they did it, but like, yeah, it's really frustrating. Like, if somebody came into my house and moved my things because they thought that it wasn't in the right place, like, like, I'm gonna see you out the door real quick. So just thinking of it that way, but if they're like, hey, Kate, like, I know I don't live here and it's your place, but I'm a little concerned, you know, that you have, you know, your plugged in hair dryer sitting on the edge of the bathtub or something like that. You know, that might not be the safest spot for it. And talking it through that way. So you recognize where the person's at and then try and make the change. Does anybody want to try? Christopher stopped talking to me. He hasn't responded in 3 days.
Come on, guys. I could do it. I understand that you're upset that Christopher stopped talking to you and he hasn't called you in he hasn't responded to you in 3 days. That must be really frustrating. See, I got hang of it.
You're down. You're like, you're gonna be validating. Are
I
you
got it.
see? Okay, so this is when you have to validate when somebody's accusing you of something, right? So this is a bit of humble pie you have to eat. You're late, you're always late. I'm done working with you. Right? So automatically we want to defend ourselves. We'd be like, yeah, I know there was so much traffic. Like, or I'm not always late. You want to come up with the excuse than just recognizing that, like, you're right, you're late. Like, it doesn't matter why, but we're late. So I get accused a lot of things. And an apology, right, is first. And then, yeah, you're right. And I respect you if that's your decision. So you're late, you're always late. I'm done working with you. Hey, you know, I'm really sorry that I'm late. I know that that's really frustrating to you when I'm late, and I respect your decision. If that means that you're done working with me, I understand. That's it.
Now, would it be appropriate to also then, since this specifically involves you, would it be appropriate to say, you know, if you're willing to give me another opportunity, perhaps if I'm late again, I can give you a call. And then kind of says, like, you know, hey, I care about your time. It's valuable. It's just as valuable to me. And next time, if it's okay with you, I'll give you a call.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's great. You can offer them the suggestion on how you can fix the problem, or you can say, what can I do? Like, if you're at a loss, like you weren't late, right, at all, you're actually early or something. You can say, I get that that's really frustrating to you. What can I do next time? You know, if this would happen again, what can I do? And it might, you know, it might just be an intervention of like, you have to call 20 minutes ahead of time to let them know you're coming, because their executive functioning is not working properly and they don't really have an idea of what time it is. So that's where you can that's where the communication piece really comes into play. But yeah, problem solving then is giving them an opportunity to hear you. Go ahead, Marcia.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just chiming in.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Got
I'm
me
just,
excited.
I would do that. I would do that also along with an apology. I would. I mean, like, apology can go a long ways.
Mm-hmm. It
Mhm.
really can. Yeah. There are people banging on my door all night. One of them came in and started jumping on my bed. So the likelihood of that happening is probably slim to none. But how can you validate someone who that's not we would assume that that's not the case.
I'm in a meeting, okay?
Oh, Marcia, do you mind muting yourself?
I will. Oh, where's
Thanks.
that? Okay.
There you go. Thank you. Robin, do you know how you would validate that?
That if somebody's complaining about someone jumping on their,
Yeah, they were banging on my door all night and they came in and started jumping on my bed.
oh, I would, oh my gosh, I would try to calm them down and sympathize with them and try to encourage them, well, not encourage them, but would try to see how we could resolve the issue.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah,
there was an issue.
right. And you might have to come up with a solution that might, you know what I mean? Okay, so we'll make sure you're, we'll put a sign up that says, please do not
Right.
enter, or, something that to prevent a problem that didn't really occur, but to them it was real. So yeah, so, wow, I would have been, that would have really frustrated me if somebody was banging
Yeah.
on my door all night and they came in my room.
And
That's all
you're
you have
right.
to do.
Yeah, you're right, because a lot of times with them, they do feel like that it's truly real.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, and so you just saying that didn't happen? No, that happened.
Yeah.
It may not have happened the way we would think it happened, but it happened to them. Okay. Here's some other grounding techniques that I use. Again, when somebody's escalated, or I have somebody who's like pretty manic, and she just it's like one long run on sentence, and I can't ever get a word in, and her thoughts are going so fast that she's not really even thinking about what she's saying. So I will stop her and I will make her go through this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then she can calm and she can talk for probably about 30 seconds, and then she goes off again, and I had to bring her back and do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 again. So tell me 5 things you can see. So in this room, I would just list off the 5 things I can see. 4 things I can touch. Like I can touch the paper, I can touch my phone, I can touch the soda. So literally things that you can touch. 3 things you can hear. I can hear my chair squeaking, I can hear a beep outside, and I can hear the bubbles in my soda. So in the moment, the senses that you can actually go through in that, in that situation. 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So sometimes with the smell, people are like, I can't smell anything. So then I'll say, okay, well, you could smell the candle, or you could smell the rain outside. So those ones I'll give a little bit of a leeway to. But then you can just keep running through that. That's a really good grounding technique for somebody who's feeling anxious, for somebody who is perseverating on something. The 4x4 breathing is you inhale for 4 seconds, then you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you continuously repeat that. They say to repeat it 4 times through. You can repeat it as much as you need. I do this all the time in the car with 2 kids screaming. I do my 4x4 breathing a lot. Guided meditation is another good one. You can just go on YouTube and type in guided meditation. If you have somebody who likes the beach, there's beach ones. There's ones that you're walking through a forest. There's one, if somebody's like a baseball fan, they talk about what it feels like to hold the baseball and the bat and what that feels like. And, all of those types of things. Or you can do self-guided, where you can sit there and tell the person to take some deep breaths and to relax their forehead and relax the different parts of their bodies. Physical touch is another grounding technique that I use, but to do it, you need to definitely have conversations with the team and make sure it's intentional. Because physical touch, and you don't want to just assume that physical touch is an appropriate grounding technique, because some people it could be a trigger. But I have somebody that I pancake their hand. So they put their hand on top of my hand and then I pancake it, and that grounds them. Then they're able to kind of relax and come down because there's that human to human connection. And really so many of our folks are touch hungry, because they don't have anybody in their life that will provide them with touch. So, but just don't do that on your own. You need to have conversations with people to do that. And then most importantly, you need to take care of yourself when working with individuals with mental health. So we're all human. We recognize that. We need to recognize that about each other. Our ability to manage emotions fluctuates throughout the day, right? If I have a really tough morning with my kid, my ability to like sit and listen to somebody like complain about things that aren't true is a lot less than if I, can wake up and have my coffee and go through my morning routine with no disruptions. So we have our own fluctuations throughout the day and our abilities. We have our own triggers, right? So being aware of those and then anticipating it. Okay, when I go in, I'm probably going to be called a name. Like that's a trigger. My mom used to always call me a name, and I know that they're going to call me that same name. What do I need to do? Try not to personalize rejection. Again, these individuals have been through so much and have worked with so many different people that they're anticipating rejection from you. And so they're always going to go into self-preservation and try and protect themselves. So I have somebody who you can have like a great day with them and you think it's the best day, but because they enjoyed themselves that day, that when you leave, they're like, ooh, that felt too good. I'm afraid they're going to leave. And so they'll reject you. So then we have to do follow-ups to get them to feel secure again in that relationship. So it might be that they actually really like you and then they're afraid that you're going to leave. So never just take rejection at face value, but accept it and work with the team on the best way to approach that. And, or they could have a staff who wore the same perfume as you, and that staff was not a good staff to them. And so you wore that perfume and now they identify you with that staff and now they no longer want to work with you. That has nothing to do with you, right? That is not personal to you at all. That was an issue before you came and it will be an issue after you come every time they smell that perfume. So don't personalize if it doesn't work for some reason. Talk to your team and your supervisor. Venting is okay, and so is humor. We laugh a lot about some of the situations we come across because you just never thought that you'd be doing that at some point in your day or your life. You can request breaks from cases, practice grounding techniques. And then the trick that I always do is we always tend to leave our tongue on the roof of our mouth. Like if you stop right now and think about where your tongue is, it's touching the roof of your mouth. If you just drop it down and let it sit behind your lower teeth, it's an automatic release in your jaw muscle. So if you're feeling frustrated in the moment, just drop your tongue and that'll give you really a sense of calm just in the moment. I think that's it. We'll go through. You guys were all very silent. Does anybody have any questions, any feedback, any thing that you've experienced that you wanted to talk about?
I'm trying to think if there's anything. There isn't anything crazy like pressing right now, so I think that,
Yeah.
Knock on wood, that's today. I mean, of course, last night there was craziness, but that's kind of daily.
Yeah, right. You never know how things are gonna pan out or what's going to pop up. Yeah, I think, the big takeaway is we should look at our individuals, first of all, as people, right? And give them grace, because they've probably been through some more stressful situations than we've experienced, because, either because of their deficits and not being able to process or understand. I have somebody, one of my colleagues has someone whose mother died 2 years ago, and he's having behaviors, and the staff was like, I don't know if anyone actually told him that his mom died.
Oh, wow.
Like, of course that's going to cause some behaviors and cause some, anxiety and depression if your mom just disappeared and you have no closure or understanding of where she went. So just remembering, include them in your conversations about issues that are happening and get their input, because they're the ones who have to have the buy-in. So using their thoughts and what they want into their treatment, and then looking at them as a puzzle. Like, there is a reason they are who they are in that moment. So what occurred to get them to that place? What occurred to get them to that place of their trouble with mental health? It's not just because they're trying to be a difficult person or trying to, not to make your life harder. That's not their intention.
Yeah, and I
So-
think that one thing that I see a lot just in the field in general is when people have limited verbal skills, people assume, like, even if it's something as simple as, you're, let's say, helping somebody do the dishes and talking them through that, even if they can't necessarily communicate that with you, communicating with them like, hey, we're going to do the dishes now, like, let's, do you want to help me? And, kind of just talking through different things with them, even if you're not 100% sure if they are comprehending everything that you're saying. Sometimes that can go a long way of just, it might not be that they're comprehending what you're saying, they're picking up on your cues, they're picking up on your physical cues, on, you're smiling and different in your body language. And I think that just the compassion that you show people through your actions means more to people than I think people always realize.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it goes both ways too, with people who don't have the communication skills, right? And so we automatically assume that they're not going to understand or comprehend. But then you have other people who have really great communication skills, but then they struggle with executive functioning. So they can tell you what needs to be done, but their ability to initiate and complete it doesn't match where their verbal is. So that's where, you have to do more of the visual stuff and modeling and pairing with them to show them how to do the steps when we automatically assume that they're capable. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways. I agree.
That's
All right.
awesome. Thank you so much. I found this to be extremely informative. So, I will tell you this, after trainings, even though we don't always have people that participate that much during trainings, the feedback is always really good. And I see people utilizing the stuff from the training. So they do get stuff
Good.
out.
Hey, you did a super good job, and I love all your trainings. I just had an on-call incident I had to deal with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks,
All right.
Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yes,
Thank you
yeah.
for participating.
You're welcome. I'll see ya.
All
All right. See ya.
Thanks, Kate.
And-
Appreciate it.
Have
Yeah.
a good Christmas.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Can't find my mouse.
All right. And if anybody